Hello everyone and welcome back to another MinotaurZombie Review slash thoughts, this time on Parasite Eve 2. The first one intrigued me definitely enough to play the second one. It was a really unique game and I looked forward to seeing what they would do with Parasite Eve 2. In fact, I was hoping that they would improve on kind of the things in Parasite Eve 1, but we'll get into exactly how the game plays compared to Parasite Eve 1 later. The game, obviously made by Squaresoft before they became Square Enix. Once again, you take on the role of Aya Bray, who is basically has mitochondria all up in her body and kind of gives her superpowers to some degree. What you won't see in this game is a lot of the supporting characters from Parasite Eve 1. In fact, almost none of them. They're referenced. Dr. Maeda and shit, who was a partner in the first game? I can't remember now, but he isn't there either. Instead, we have a whole new cast of characters, and even Aya's personality seems to have changed a lot from the first game. She's, I would say, a little bit more vulnerable in this game, as well as a little bit more sassy, it seems like. I guess when the weight of, the entire world of New York City is on her shoulders, she has a little bit more time to make jokes and that sort of thing. Once again, Aya herself is a great character. Even though her personality seems to have changed quite a bit from the first game, I still thoroughly enjoyed Aya as a character. I can't say as much for the supporting characters in this game. I never felt like I could really get attached to anyone, I guess. Everyone just kind of jumps in and out when they feel like it. They kind of try a forced love interest and all of this, and I don't know, I just wasn't really buying it. The story as a whole could be summed up as Resident Evil 2, but slightly different. You could replace Aya with Jill, Aya's guy with Magnum partner with Barry Burton, and replace mitochondria with whatever T-virus, X-virus, whatever they're talking about in Resident Evil these days, and boom! You got Resident Evil 2.5. I don't know what happened, if the first game didn't sell very well, or wasn't well received back in the day, but almost everything about that made the first game unique in terms of story and even gameplay has just been completely revamped for Parasite Eve 2. And it's not necessarily a horrible thing. It's still a decent game, but it kind of makes me a little sad that they didn't try and keep going with all the innovations they had in the first game. So, I mean, overall the story is decent. It's very Resident Evil. I wouldn't expect anything amazing. It's certainly not on par with the first game, I'd say. The first game had a much stronger story, I believe. I do like how Aya will interact with her thoughts and that sort of stuff a lot more in the world. Once again, much like Resident Evil, where you can examine a potted plant and Aya will be like, that plant sure could use some water. Looks like that gardener isn't around, as dead bodies are everywhere. All in all, the story's alright. The gameplay itself, holy shit, like I said, completely different from the first game. What we have here is very standard Resident Evil, albeit with a few differences. The main differences being that Aya has her parasite powers, which, in this, compared to the first game, it was almost all supporting. This game, it's like 90% of all your parasite powers attack, which is alright. Gone is the automatically refilling parasite meter, and in is just a generic MP gauge. Certain spells take more MP than others. You get MP whenever you finish a battle. It works. It can be frustrating. Sometimes I feel like your MP doesn't go up very fast, and there's some enemies that you pretty much have to cast spells on to kill them, which are incredibly annoying. Overall, I felt like it was done better. Gone is leveling up in general, too. Now you just get a generic experience, which is essentially a currency to put towards whatever spells you want and whatever tree you want. There's fire, earth, wind? No, fire, earth, water, and something. Electricity. I found myself sticking to fire, and water for healing, and fire for big explosion-y damage. It was alright. The guns, certainly a lot fewer guns than the first game, but that said, the guns feel more unique. It isn't, Gone is the, trying to combine guns to make the best gun ever. Now you just kind of got standard guns. There isn't a whole lot of them, but they do feel very unique. My biggest problem is that like I said, there isn't very many of them. I found myself using, like, the pistol. Occasionally you'll get, like, a new pistol, but it's, like, the same shotgun from the beginning of the game, and the same assault rifle from the beginning of the game, and then I got a grenade pistol launcher from the beginning of the game, and then it's like, that's it. And then it was, like, right before the final battle. Then all of a sudden, I could buy all these different weapons, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they should have dished them out a little bit more throughout the game, but that's just me. I should also mention, goner bonus points in place are BP, which, funnily enough, same acronym. When you kill enemies, it's kind of like your money. There are very, very few shops strewn about the game where you can basically exchange your BP for weapons, ammo, equipment, etc. As for the combat itself, well, like I said, very Resident Evil. You press a button, you lock onto the enemy, and from there, you start firing. There seems to be critical hits, and I'm not sure if there was a rhyme or reason to it, but it seemed very random to me. I'm sure someone will tell me I'm stupid and I was playing the game entirely wrong, but the enemies can very much be bullet sponges throughout a good portion of the game. Luckily, they give you unlimited ammo, or at least unlimited pistol ammo, pretty much at all times throughout the game, which really lessens the tension and kind of what they were... I mean, once again, I feel like the horror element has gone even further from this game compared to the first. I complained in the first game how, you know, the random battles kind of detracted from that because, I mean, you just kind of went into this arena. This game, almost every room has enemies, and your GPS will even tell you on the map which rooms have enemies. You'll wipe out a room, and then you'll, like, progress, like, the tiniest bit in the story, and then all the rooms will be filled with enemies again. It can be rather tedious. That's the good thing that they give you infinite ammo, because it would be goddamn ridiculous if they didn't. You'd have to run past, like, everything. Now, if you're familiar with Resident Evil, it is standard tank controls in this game as well, which I know turns a lot of people off. So if you're completely against tank controls, this game has them. They're not the worst I've seen. In fact, Aya seems to turn pretty quick. It's been a long time since I played an old Resident Evil game, but she seems to even turn a little bit faster than that. But the lack of a quick turn button where you spin 180, that was a later, you know, feature staple of the Resident Evil series. The lack of that really hurts. And I'd say that the best part, though, that it has on Resident Evil is you can press a button to lock on, and then you can start moving away, and then the second you stop moving, Aya will immediately shimmy back towards the enemy, which is actually very nice. Very, very nice touch. As for aiming on multiple enemies, it is a pain in the ass. Big time. You have like 20 little monkeys like scrounging up and gnawing at your ankles, and you just want to shoot each of them to kind of like get the hits done on each one and keep them at bay. So you're switching, and how you do it is you hold the aim button down and you press left or right on the D-pad. Standard fare, it would be perfect, except for the fact that when one of them dies, you're still holding onto the auto-aim button, by the way, to switch between them, and when one of them dies, you stop auto-aiming altogether, so you're still pressing left or right on the D-pad, and when one dies, you have to let go and press the targeting button again, which sounds like a really, like, minor nitpick, but when there's so many enemies and they're all coming at you, it is really frustrating to have to, you know, realize one died and then have to switch to another target by pressing the auto-aim button again. It would have been really nice if it would have just automatically switched to another target, because honestly, there's almost no reason why you wouldn't want to be aiming at something. Overall, the gunplay was alright. It wasn't awful. I think the biggest detriment they had was just constantly respawning monsters in all the rooms every time you advance the story a little bit, especially in about the last half of the game when it all kind of takes place in this one facility. And so you're backtracking a lot, and so every time you do one little thing, it's like, oh shit, every room's full again. Laser, and it doesn't even make sense. Like, the monsters I could see, but all of a sudden, like, the goddamn sentry guns and pew pew lasers are back that are attached to the wall, and I'm just thinking, is there some mad engineer just going around placing all this shit when I isn't looking? So that can be a little frustrating. That's probably the biggest detriment, is that it gets a little old by the end of the game, and enemies can be, especially towards the end of the game, be big bullet sponges. As for inventory management, I really hate that they took some steps back from the first game, namely that you could swap items with like a box. Like if you found one, you could swap an item in place of it, so if it's something that you just use right away, and then you can grab what you want back. But you still get a lot of slots. I mean, you get 20 slots, but then you got to remember that's going to be your ammo, your guns, and just a bunch of, a bunch of other shit. It's interesting how they do it. You don't have access to your entire inventory in battle. Your armor will have so many slots to put items into, and those will be the things you can use during battle. It was alright. It's there to build tension so you can't have like 20 goddamn recovery 5s and just instantly heal yourself constantly. So it wasn't too bad. I will say this though. They committed the ultimate sin when it comes to inventory management. They took what Resident Evil did. They said, okay, there's going to be item boxes throughout this world, and that's where you can put your excess items. Perfect. That's awesome. If you're going to give me restricted inventory, please let me do that. Oh, wait. All the item boxes have a different inventory, and the item boxes have a limit as to what they can hold too. Like, it's not even a very big limit. It's about as much as you can hold on yourself, so it's only another 20 slots. I know it doesn't make any sense. I get that having a communal item box, and it's the same items no matter which item box you access. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's really annoying when I put items, like, at the very beginning of this facility, and I left all my healing items there, and I gotta go back and get those, and I'm at the bottom. I can't just access the box that's conveniently at the bottom. I have to go all the way back up. At the very, very end of the game, they sort of remedy this by then, all of a sudden, for some reason, giving you access to all the boxes at once. Until that point, you gotta run back and forth, and that can get frustrating fast. Now, despite all the things I just said, it still was pretty decent gameplay-wise. The spells helped keep things interesting and kind of a twist on the Resident Evil formula. The bosses were also definitely a highlight. Each of them fairly unique and offering, different ways to avoid attacks, and pretty good sense of accomplishment when you finally beat them. The game as a whole I found to be fairly challenging, much like the first Parasite Eve, which is good in a game like this. Especially towards the end, I found myself dying, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are certain bosses that had me dying a few times, especially the final boss. And luckily, gone are the annoying, you didn't walk in the right direction, you didn't do the right thing, instant death scenarios of the first game are gone as well. Now, graphically, this game is damn fine good looking for the PlayStation. I was honestly pretty blown away by the visuals. Aya looks very detailed, all the characters look very detailed, the enemies look very detailed. The environments themselves, I mean, all of it, there was a lot of care put into the graphics in this game, which is classic Squaresoft. I mean, that's what they're known for. If you want to see the PlayStation 1 pull some crazy shit off, this is a good game. The cutscenes are phenomenal as well, for the most part. I mentioned it in my first review of the first game, but this game they decided to go with the Resident Evil approach of, very, like, a lot of fixed camera positions as you move throughout each environment. They kinda got it right. The most annoying part is almost every time you enter a room, they do the most annoying camera angle they can, to where it's like, here's a close-up on Aya and the door you came from. You can't see any of the other room yet. There's suspense. Is there an enemy in here? And I'm like, yeah, there is an enemy in here. The map says there's enemies in here. I can see an enemy over there already, and I'm going to aim at him, and the screen's going to freeze and go into a battle mode. There's no need to try and hide that from me when you're going to tell me that enemies are in here. That's probably the most frustrating part. I will say, it doesn't have the Resident Evil problem as bad of, there's enemies you can't see off screen and you gotta just kind of shoot, take a wild stab at it. They did a pretty good job at avoiding that for the most part. I mean, there's a few areas where I ran into that, but that's unavoidable when you're gonna do camera angles like this. The music, pretty underwhelming. There is nothing as fantastic as, the original Primal Eyes, which was the intro song of the first game. In fact, I'm trying to think. I'll play my favorite ones from the game after listening to the OST again, but I can't really think of anything in particular that stands out to me out of this soundtrack. Maybe when I actually listen to the music again, that might change, I suppose, but it was alright. I mean, it wasn't bad. It's kind of your standard horror game. Kind of wrapping it up, final thoughts. Is Parasite Eve 2 worth playing? If you're looking for a game that is very similar to the first 3 Resident Evils, maybe not as scary as those games, I'd say on par with scariness. If you're looking for a game that plays very similar to those beginning Resident Evils, I even forgot to mention, they even kind of have basic puzzles, just like the other Resident Evils. If you're looking for a game like that, Parasite Eve is a damn fine clone of what Resident Evil was back in the day. It's a solid game. It has some flaws. Its most notable downfall is that it's a sequel to a game that tried to be so different, and in the end, it's when they made the second one, they made something so, I guess, samey. They didn't try and push the envelope like they did with the first game, which is alright, but it just makes it feel so different. It makes it feel like it's practically not even from the same series. And all in all, it's almost made me appreciate the first one more and kind of make me think even back more positively on it. So, there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. This has been MinotaurZombie. Later, guys.